All right, Chris CUOMO here. Thank you for joining NewsNation's continuing coverage of Hurricane Milton. Now, the big surprise with this storm was what happened before the hurricane actually hit, okay? These outer bands caused tornadoes that they're still trying to figure out the count of. Absolutely dozens of them, but not where we expected along that west coast of Florida. It was in the center of the state. On the east coast, that's where I am right now, in Fort Pierce. I'm not supposed to be here, but we had to come because look at behind me. This is a postcard of what tornadoes do, just destroying buildings. I'll show you in a second, but I have a public service announcement from the authorities here for people who are in Florida, but also in the states affected by Helene, not just Milton, okay? There is a scam going on, all right? This isn't the kind of stuff that the media ordinarily talks about in these situations, but I think it matters. A lot of people are being approached by people who are saying, and entities that are saying they're with the insurance company, they're adjusters, and they're signing things. Sign nothing. You need to sign nothing to get money from your insurance companies. You executed contracts and plans when you signed up. If people are coming to you on the east coast of Florida, anywhere in North Carolina, Georgia, anywhere that was affected by these storms, and they're asking you to sign things, the CFO of the state of Florida works with Governor DeSantis, okay, the chief financial officer, says, what you're signing is signing away your claim to these people who are going to get paid by the insurance companies. All right? Sign nothing. I spoke to a local law enforcement official, the sheriff of Port St. Lucie. I talked to the CFO who works with the governor. They are on the lookout for this scam, and they believe it is going on right now. Okay? So be aware. Sign nothing. There is no need to do that to get your claim going. Or we got to care about each other. Or we got to expose problems, and that is one. Now, tornadoes were not supposed to be part of Hurricane Milton, all right? And they were in a big way. And communities have been devastated. People have died. Search and rescue is still going on. I'm staying away from the numbers. I know you've heard 4, 5, 6, 10, 12. They don't know the numbers yet. Let's give them the time to do search and rescue. But there absolutely were deadly events, okay? Tornadoes, we looked around today as we came across from where we were in Tampa, across the middle of the state, onto the East Coast. And the devastation is real, all right? Now, this is what I'm standing in front of right now. This gas station and the little Quickie Mart that they had here, the tornado is different than a hurricane. It is a turbocharged wind event, right? And it ripped the roof right off of this. It tossed these casement fridges and these coolers that are hundreds of pounds each. It tossed them like dominoes all over this place. The cement and steel top that was on top of the gas stations was ripped off and just deposited behind me. You see a circle around the entire place where we are right now that is the same as those concentric circles of the tornado. The guy next door watched it happen, heard those crazy noises, and looked out, and everything was just being destroyed. The people here weren't ready for that. We weren't warned for that. So the communities were essentially vulnerable. Now, I want to show you something else. This massive factory that had a corrugated steel edifice around it, okay? And ironically, it is a truss factory, T-R-U-S-S. Trusses are architectural pieces that create strength, used with wood, sometimes steel. That's what they make here. The entire building was destroyed by a tornado. Nobody saw this coming. So what it does is it layered the effect of this storm, Milton. Was it what was feared? No, not as far as I can tell in terms of how much water and wind damage they expected. We're going to take you around the places that were hit and show you what it was about. But the story really right now are the tornadoes. So I want to bring in storm chaser Jordan Hall. And I want to talk to him about chasing this storm, specifically the tornadoes we've had to deal with. Jordan, thank you very much. I'm glad you're safe. It was interesting hearing your story of chasing this and people recognizing you and wanting to help you and give you fuel, literally, to keep doing it. But the tornadoes were a surprise. And how did that manifest itself in terms of what you saw unfold with Hurricane Milton?
Yeah, so I was actually geared up, ready to intercept Hurricane Milton at my hotel. And then that morning we got up and we were looking at the forecast and it was like painting a pretty clear picture that we were likely going to see tornadoes. And we ended up bailing east and risking our gas supply to see if we could go capture some of these tornadoes, because it was such an odd event coming out of the outer bands of Hurricane Milton.
Now, you've seen a lot of hurricanes, and Milton, I'm sure, is not the worst thing you've ever had to deal with. But this many tornadoes of this kind of strength and what they were able to do, how did that rank for you?
It definitely ranked number one on the side of seeing tornadoes with a hurricane. I have never actually observed physical supercellular tornadoes at that. Sometimes with hurricanes, you'll get these tropical tornadoes, more like waterspout type tornadoes. But with Milton, we were seeing full-blown supercellular tornadoes, something like you would see in Tornado Alley, like Oklahoma or Kansas, but out there in Florida, doing devastating damage and lofting debris up to 30,000 feet in some areas, which is very indicative of a strong tornado.
So did you even go back to the West Coast to see how those coastal areas that were beat up by Helene did, or were there tornadoes such a dramatic impact of this that that's the part you decided to focus on?
So what we ended up doing is we intercepted over 3 tornadoes, and then that family came and found me that was watching my live stream and provided us fuel. So once I got fuel, I actually made it back to the West Coast and intercepted the eye of Hurricane Milton and rode it out there near Venice and observed storm surge and the wind event that unfolded there.
Well, I got to tell you, I appreciate your work. I think it's crazy, but I appreciate your work. I appreciate the pictures. They help tell the story. I'm glad you're safe. Continued good fortune to you. And I'll be following you on social media. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
All right, now, there's another story that really captured people's their compassion. And there's going to be a big need for that. So I want to keep us connected to what's going on here, all right? And this wound up going crazy on social media. There's this young couple, and they have a farm, okay? And they were on the west coast of Florida, and they were afraid to leave. Their names are Sarah Weldon and Rick Bass. And they went online and explained why they couldn't leave their animals. And it just wound up being viewed millions of times because people could see how painful it was for them to make this decision. Watch.
We're not evacuating. And please don't ask me to. All these animals are children, and I've raised most of them. We've raised most of them since birth, and we're not leaving them.
Now, you know, it is a fascinating, and I don't want to say uniquely American, but it is a strongly American phenomenon at how attached we get to animals and to people's efforts to love and save and care for animals. And that absolutely, I'm telling you, I haven't seen a video that has been watched as much as this one because of how concerned people were. So the storm comes, the animals are outside, except for a couple of them, which I'm going to tell you about in a second, which is a great part of the story. But trees fall down, all kinds of wind damage, horrible things that can kill people, destroy structures, and you can imagine what it could do to farm animals. So then came the moment that Sarah had to go back outside and see how the animals were.
2 babies. All the goats. Hey, Cash. Snowbird, Brownie. Okay, these guys are okay. Okay, there's Lizzie, there's Cash's mom. Oh, thank you, God, they're okay. I don't think it crushed the coop. I see my chickens out and about. I think they're okay. 2 cows. Oh, thank you, Lord. All the rescue donkeys are okay. Everybody's okay.
6 million views. Their TikTok account went from like 120,000 to almost 600,000. This resonated, and there was an aspect of the story that got me that I haven't shown you with, so I haven't told you yet, so I want to bring in Sarah and Rick right now. Sarah, Rick, thank you very much. I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad all your fur and feather fam are safe, and there he is. This is the guy that I wanted to see. So this is the donkey named Cash, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Here he
Why?
is.
First of all, it's great to meet you. I'm glad you're okay. Why is he called Cash, by the way?
So it's not because of money. When Cash was born, he was totally black all the way around. And my husband loved Johnny Cash, and Johnny Cash wore all black. So he came up with the name, and it's been perfect. It suits him really well.
It works.
Well, I tell you what, you guys were living the Ring of Fire thing in a very different way than Johnny Cash would have ever expected it with what you had to brave. So Cash is not new to your bedroom. I thought when I first heard the story, wow, it's amazing. They brought the donkey inside to keep it safe. But no, Rick, you share the bedroom with a lot of the fur fam, but including the donkey on a regular basis.
Yeah, we do. We make it work.
So I see him on the floor. He doesn't try to get in the bed, does he?
No.
Yeah.
No, I would love him in the bed, but his little hooves would be unstable, and he doesn't like it. So he's been in our bedroom since he was born about 8 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear, Sarah, that Cash had anxiety last night, so you wanted to make sure that he stayed close. How do you know when a donkey has anxiety?
We know this little guy very well. Normally at night, he comes in, he knows the bedtime routine, he goes to bed. Last night, he'd lie down for maybe 10 minutes, and then he was up, and he was going between Rick and me and going back and forth and just pacing and lying down and pacing, and it's so unusual for his behavior. I mean, he's normally very calm at night. He knows if he can go be calm, he sleeps with us, but last night he was just all over the place.
Yep. So you have, I want to get it straight, and I want to make sure all are accounted for, 10 donkeys, 9 cows, 4 goats, 100 chickens, 6 dogs, 4 ducks. Everybody's okay?
Everybody's okay. We lost 1 rooster. I think he had a heart attack, but every single animal was okay today after such a crazy night.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, how did you make sense of how much people connected to Our Simple Homestead on TikTok, and not just the views, but the concerns? What does it mean to you, Sarah?
You know, people have been following Cash since his birth, and it's been amazing. But before the storm, I just shared my honest feelings of how scared I was to let these animals be out. And people resonated with it. And suddenly we were getting messages from all over the world, thousands and thousands of messages last night from all over the world, people praying for us, sending love, doing prayer chains, having their church pray. And it was so incredibly comforting. And, you know, we were so scared and so full of anxiety, but hearing all these people just pouring their hearts out to us that don't even know us, it was just absolutely the most comforting thing in the world. And I truly believed it helped protect us last night. It really did.
Rick, how worried were you that you were going to have a mass event to have to explain and deal with today?
Oh, God, Chris, let me tell you, it's almost like getting ready for a fight that you know you may lose, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, and there's nowhere for us to go. We wouldn't have left anyhow, but I just wanted the night to end so I could get to the morning to see what I have to deal with. That's pretty much how I had to deal with it. But the way our account just blew up last night, it was really distracting, if you will, you know, and we were just reading prayer after prayer after prayer. And I just had this great feeling that we have to be okay now. I mean, what could possibly happen with this many people praying?
Well, listen, all we can know for sure is you made it through, everybody's intact, and you're on to the next chapter of your lives, which is moving to Tennessee, I understand, to start a donkey sanctuary. I look forward to following you on social media, and now you know you got a big group of people who support the work you're doing. So out of the worst of potential situations, you made the best, and you made an opportunity out of it, and thank God everybody's together. You guys are healthy, and you're moving on, and I'm glad to hear it and glad to tell your story. That is a very well-behaved donkey, by the way.
He's
you know what? I'm gonna have to
to
think twice. I know,
He's
really good. He's really good. That's why this is a good donkey. I got kids that don't behave like that. All right, Sarah and Rick, be well. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Have a good night, Chris.
You too. God bless. I'll tell you, there was so much unexpected bad that happened here, especially along the East Coast, that it's important to remember that some people wound up getting a blessing in how this passed also. Now, we saw that. We're going to go to break now. And when I come back, we're going to do a whip with people on the West Coast to show what happened. Now, there's another story that was big. There was a guy who wanted to stay on his boat, okay, which is like extra crazy. All right, this idea that, boats are buoyant. They go up and down. That is, let me tell you, as a captain and someone who does a lot of boating, let me tell you, it's the last place I would want to be. But not Lieutenant Dan. That's not his real name, but that's how he became known. And we have an update on him. Everybody was observing. Everybody wanted to know, how did he fare? And more importantly, what is Florida now facing and what does it need? We got a guy who's a member of Congress who used to run the emergency services for this state. Now they've got double trouble. We'll explain next. All right, welcome back to News Nation's continuing coverage of Hurricane Milton. Of course, not about the hurricane, though. It's about the tornadoes that the hurricane spawned. That's what caused what you're seeing behind me. Just ripped the top off of all kinds of structures, gutted structures, killed people. And it was something that was not expected. And they came in the dozens and dozens. They still don't know how many tornadoes there were. That was the surprise part of the story. But of course, this was also a wind and water event. And it created a lot of human interest stories as well. And I want to bring in two of our best here that we had covering it with me last night. Brian Enton and Ryan Bass in different areas. They've been doing this. Now, Brian, I'll start with you. Thanks again for last night and everything that you did after and before and this morning. Appreciate you. What can you tell us about the water behind you? And I know you have an update for one of the cast of characters that Milton birthed. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the water is still high here in North Tampa, which kind of like the tornadoes surprised you. None of us saw the tornadoes coming. We didn't really know that there was going to be this kind of flooding in North Tampa. Let me show you behind me. By the way, you got people on kayaks here. This is a Walgreens. Yeah, they're on kayaks just cruising around. But this is an area that doesn't normally flood, Chris. This is not anywhere near the bay. We're not near the ocean. This isn't storm surge. The sheriff told me it's never flooded here before, but it just rained so much, so fast, that this entire neighborhood is now underwater. They had to rescue about 100 people from a senior center. So it's been a real mess out here all day. You talked about Lieutenant Dan, the sort of the viral sensation of all of this. If you watched yesterday, we interviewed him. He was out in the storm on his sailboat. He refused to leave. I basically begged him to get off the boat. The mayor came out. The police chief came out. Everybody thought he wasn't going to make it, but he made it. I went and checked on him when the storm passed late last night, early this morning, really, Chris. And he was okay. I mean, he had to move things around, and he was on a different side of the dock, but he made it through, Chris.
Now, is that where he was, that video that I'm seeing now? Was he up against the cement bulkhead, or was he on some floating dock or something? Is that how he survived?
No, he was up against the cement bulkhead, which, like, all the messages were like, he doesn't even have fenders. He doesn't even have fenders. People were freaking out. He only had one line. But remember all the water rushed out? I showed you that last night. I think maybe that ended up helping him because he kind of was like just sitting almost on the sand for a while, you know? But, you know, wasn't really the smartest thing, but he refused to get off the boat.
You know, it's such a weird dynamic of these storms. You know, some people do everything right and they wind up losing everything. This guy, I know he became very popular and I'm glad he's okay, but it was like this was top of the list of dumb things to do, but he made it out. Lucky for him. And that's what it is, dumb luck. Ryan, you're at Tropicana Field. Now, we believe that there could have been a tornado event or a mass wind event that literally took the roof off that place, right? Tell us about it.
No, it literally ripped the roof off of Major League Baseball's Tropicana Field, which is home of the Tampa Bay Rays here behind me. Full transparency, Chris, that's not just a building behind me. That's also my office. I also work for the Rays as a broadcaster for Bally Sports. So I know this building intimately. I go there for work all the time, day games, night games. And to see it in shambles like this is absolutely crazy. And we heard the winds last night when we joined you around this same time 24 hours ago. You heard some of those whipping gusts. We actually had 101 mile per hour wind gusts that were registered here in St. Petersburg, which explains the reason why the roof got absolutely shredded. Now, that roof was supposed to withstand 115 mile per hour winds. But yet, you see what happened last night. This was during the worst of it that was coming through. I shot some of this video. I mean, it was flapping in the wind. We heard the sound of that fiberglass roof that was just ripping off of the structure of Tropicana Field. So it became a phenomenon. A lot of folks have been checking it out today. It went viral on social media. The drone video that you saw that we shot, that's got almost 4 million views on social. So it's been a crazy phenomenon, and that's a lot of damage, Chris. I mean, I talked to Rays officials. They've been surveying a lot of the damage. There's a lot of work ahead to try to get this baseball ballpark ready to go for opening day in March 27th of 2025.
Well, they got their work cut out for them, and that's not easy work to do either. It's tough to keep people safe doing that. And I tell you, it has a spooky reminder of what we saw with the Superdome after Katrina. My producer here with me, we were covering that back then. Also, that was 2 jobs ago for me. That was ABC News. But of course, just to put a little silver lining on it, nobody got hurt, and the Tropicana Field, it is what it is. They can fix it. The Superdome was a very different deal, man. That place wound up being like a mausoleum with all the death that took place. So you got to take your good fortune when you find it, even in the midst of bad. Brian Enton, thank you very much. Ryan Bass, nice to meet you, man. Great work. It's great to have you on the team. I don't care how many jobs you have. You do them all really well. Thank you for being with me tonight. Now, I want to bring in somebody who's wearing 2 hats for us. He's a member of Congress, but he also used to run emergency management here in the state of Florida. So he knows the state really well, and he understands the politics local, but also on the federal level. Representative Jared Moskowitz, Democrat, Florida. Congressman, it's good to have you again tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris, and I appreciate going after Lieutenant Dan and Cash the donkey. I know I've now made it in life.
Yeah, well, you're third, but it could have been worse.
I also suffer potentially from donkey anxiety, by the way.
I know. Yeah, you got a different kind of donkey anxiety about how close this presidential election is. And there is a lot of politics being played with it. But I want to start with, what actually matters to people, because we didn't expect the tornado event in the center and eastern part of your state. I was told today by local officials that they don't know what this is going to mean in terms of resources and efforts on the state and federal level, because it wasn't really something they were anticipating. How does it work, and what does it mean for the people in Florida?
Well, yeah, obviously the fact that we had 126 tornado warnings, the most in Florida history, the second most in U.S. history after the 2011 Alabama tornado outbreak, 40 tornadoes on the ground potentially in Florida, also the most in history. And we have been talking in Florida emergency management, as Kevin Guthrie, the director, that these hurricanes can spawn tornadoes. We saw it in Ian, but nothing like what Milton did. And so, yeah, you had people on the East Coast that weren't even getting tropical storm force winds, but got these tornadoes in a couple of bands that went through. What it means is the geographic area now of the damage is bigger. It means you have more counties that are meeting their damage threshold. It means you had rescue crews going out to East Coast, even though that we were maybe using those assets getting ready for the West Coast. It means that, you have now residents that are going to be needing additional FEMA dollars, obviously, whether that's SBA loans as well, which, as we know, there's not enough money in that fund. And so it's more resources in more places. And so it distrains the entire system even greater than the 10 or 15 or 20 counties we thought would happen between the west coast of Florida, central Florida, and then exiting out, near Daytona Beach and Jacksonville. The fact that you have St. Lucie County nowhere near where the storm came in, having devastation, and will meet their damage threshold is just Milton will go down as the hat trick. We had storm surge, we had wind damage, and we had tornadoes. We have not seen that before.
And the season's not over yet, so we'll keep watching what's happening here. The compound effect is going to be really tough. There are going to be a lot of people hurting for a very long time. One last quick thing. What is your take on what to do when your opposition is spinning a lot of bull bleep about FEMA or, whether people can control the weather. I mean, really dumb stuff. You responded to Marjorie Taylor Greene, the member of Congress, making this stupid suggestion that Democrats can control the weather. Are you worried that by engaging and taking that stuff on, you're only amplifying the message?
Chris, I think one of the things we've learned, unfortunately, in how communications works in this time in the day is that you can't allow it to go unchallenged. You can't allow them to just be the only ones communicating. And if you don't respond, and there's a vacuum left, and then people think it's true. And so, when Marjorie Taylor Greene says that we have a weather machine, I would like to know why Donald Trump didn't unplug the weather machine when he was president, and why we had hurricanes when he was president. Why didn't you just make it go away? And so, listen, we can't fix stupid, right? And we were talking about Lieutenant Dan. I mean, stupid is as stupid does. And we got Marjorie, and we're going to have to deal with her. But she's hurting a lot of people. There were a lot of people that are listening to government and to elected officials. Should I evacuate? Should I take my family? Should I take my pet? Should I go to a shelter?
That's different.
Should I go to a friend's house? And if they don't trust when government says it's not safe for you to leave, they're going to stay. And they could potentially die based on what she's doing to institutions by saying we're creating all of this, right? The reason there's a hurricane in North Carolina is there's a silicone mine, or the reason this hurricane we've never seen a hurricane go to Tampa.
I agree. I agree. I'm just saying you got to believe that anyone who's paying attention to Marjorie Taylor Greene and taking heed in her saying that there's such thing as a weather machine, you ain't going to get their votes anyway. And they're not going to be smart enough to leave during a hurricane anyway. A little bit of it is, so you can't save everybody,
No, of course, but, we can't just allow that to go unchecked anymore. Democrats have been too much on the defensive, trying to explain things. It's time to go on the offense with that stuff. We got to take on the stupid and the misinformation. Watching what Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing, and then you go watch the foreign accounts that are being manipulated by China and Russia, amplifying that to cause more confusion and more chaos here.
Yeah, that's true.
And and so we can't let the chairwoman of the Mensa caucus just get away with this.
I know. Listen, I hear you. Congressman Moskowitz, thank you very much. I appreciate you. And thank you for looking after your constituents and your fellow citizens down here in Florida. They're going to need our attention. They're going to need our help, and it's going to be for a long time. So we'll stay in touch. I'm always a phone call away if you want to come on to discuss the latest and what needs to be done and how politics are getting in the way. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
All right, let's take a break. I'll tell you what, I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. We'll keep talking about this, and we'll do it in phone calls. But I don't know that the Democrats are going to effectively be able to stop someone like MTG from telling people there's a weather machine. But I'll tell you who could. Trump. And I have his daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, who, of course, is an official with the Republican National Committee. And I want to talk to her about the state of play of this campaign and how this event and the politics around it affected it in her estimation. Stay with us. Lara Trump joins us now, co-chair of the Republican National Committee. Appreciate you taking the opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you.
Oh, I'd like to have a title for these conversations now. It's called The Exchange. All right, I have two items of exchange with you. The first one is on the macro level. If everything is so obvious and so terrible, why do you believe this election is so close? I haven't seen one like this since 20 years ago. I'd say 2004 is the closest one to how tight these polls are. If everything's so bad and obvious, why is it so tight?
Well, I got to tell you, Chris, I think come November 5th, probably around this time of night, 8:37 p.m., we're going to see that it's actually not been that close and not been that tight. We're going to play the next 26 days as though we're 40 behind and we have to make up a lot. But I believe, actually, that there is so much more support out there than is being shown in these polls. If you look at polling for Donald Trump in 2020 and 2016, he's traditionally never polled very well. And the actual sentiment of the American people has always been more on his side than the polls reflect. So I actually don't believe a lot of the polls. And the polls we do have, while they're tight, you see Donald Trump up pretty much in all of those swing state polls. And we like to see that, but I actually believe it is far, far higher than what those polls reflect.
I think that it's a sampling error. And I also think that it's a cultural conversion, that people aren't reachable the same way anymore. And there's a reticence and there's a mistrust. I'm looking at the Vegas odds. and they have it knotted up too and moving back and forth. And those guys know what they're talking about. Yeah, right now he's up. But, it's been moving around, and it's really tight. So that's why I ask you. Now on the specific, I don't get the need to mess with things like storm funding. I don't understand why supporters of the former president and the former president himself are making things up about money going to migrants instead of to the storm victims. That's not how it works, and he knows that. Why does he need to do that?
Chris, listen, no one's making anything up. There were $750 directly from Kamala Harris's mouth that are going to the people in North Carolina. This is a loan that they're going to have to pay back to get them whatever they need immediately, their immediate needs met. And what we understand from Alejandro Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, is that FEMA has been out of funding. They really don't have a lot for any more hurricanes. We just had the one come through yesterday here in Florida. That's why you're down here right now. And if we have a pie and you take a piece out of the pie, say $650 million in fiscal year 24 for rehousing and rehoming and replacing migrants who came across our border illegally, it certainly does make people say, hey, couldn't we have maybe given more than $750 to the American citizens who just lost everything, their homes, their livelihoods, everything has changed for them? So that is not false. That is not bad information. And I think that it's just frustrating for the American people to continue to see that it feels like this administration, Chris, prioritizes people who broke our laws to come here over American citizens. It's a big frustration.
But that's not what there's. Look, I get it. I get the frustration. I get the tension. But that's not what they're saying, and that's not how it works either. Certainly, Harris had nothing to do. No vice president has really anything to do with anything. Let's be honest, okay? I never remember President Trump talking about what Pence was doing, all right, until it came to certifying the election.
Actually,
but I get politics. I'll give you that.
Biden, Chris, according to Joe Biden, she's been part of every decision. She's been there right alongside of him. So I don't know. You have to ask Joe about that.
Now they're changing their narrative. But I'm saying two wrongs don't make a right for me, Lara. So Biden, putting Harris in charge of storm stuff now and doing all that's all politics. And I don't think it's a good look. So
sure is.
I don't like it whenever I see it. But this is about Congress. Congress, of course, is the one that has the purse strings. We all know this. We watched, Schoolhouse Rock. So they are the ones who pick the money. They're who says how much FEMA gets. They're how much of each of the different pockets in FEMA money went to. This isn't a Biden thing. Why don't you blame Congress if you have a problem with it?
Well, I certainly believe the president can make some sort of emergency declaration. And I also believe that had our border czar, Kamala Harris, done her job and addressed the problem at our southern border instead of exacerbating the problem at our southern border, we wouldn't have even had to pay $650 million. It's actually been over $1 billion since those two took over, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, that we, the American taxpayer, have paid for people, again, who broke our law to come here. And it's becoming a huge problem. Every state is a border state now. We've seen fentanyl deaths, 300,000 of them since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took over the White House. You see the issues that it causes for so many different parts of this country, $12 billion over the course of 3 years to the city of New York. You have Aurora, Colorado, of course, with the Venezuelan gang taking things over there. Wherever you look around this country, it has caused problems. It has been positive for no one. And so I think at the base of this is the fact that people are very upset that a person who thinks we should give her another crack at it, Kamala Harris, couldn't even do the one job she was given as border czar and actually secure our southern border. So again, very frustrating to the American people. I can tell you what Donald Trump wants to do. He wants to reverse that policy. He wants to make sure we don't have people pouring over our southern border. He wants to put more money back in people's pockets, make it a safe country, and give us peace agreements instead of wars in the Middle East and around the world.
Give me the benefit of context that you're not giving your opponents, but that's their job is to demand the context of what Trump said the other night in Aurora. He said, he was talking about Aurora, and he said, we're going to take it back. We're going to take our country back. We're going to go back 200-300 years. I don't want to go back 200-300 years. You shouldn't want to go back 200-300 years. You wouldn't even be able to vote. What does he mean when he says, that's what was always my concern about MAGA, that it seems so inherently regressive. What is he like about 300 years ago America versus today?
No, that's the first time I've heard that. I would have to ask him what he's talking about there. But listen, Make America Great Again is about the future, and it's about making this country a place that works for every American, no matter where you started, no matter how much money you have right now, no matter your education. Nothing matters except your drive, your passion, and your work ethic in the United States of America. That's called the American dream, Chris. He wants to bring it back for people.
Yeah.
And that has always been what Make America Great Again has always been about. It's been misconstrued and people saying, oh, he wants to go back to this era or that era. It's about going forward and making this country great for everyone. I don't know. I got to ask him about that. That's the first I've heard of it. So thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, you better ask him and tell him to stop saying it if he wants people to not get afraid, especially on the minority side and women and everybody who's seen advances over the course of history. But Lara Trump, I appreciate making the case as always. I enjoy our exchanges now that I know that's what they're called. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
All right. Take care. So, for us, look, it's going to be pushback for you guys who are watching the show. I know we have a lot of new viewers. You got to push back. That's the job. You got to expose the game. That's the job. But how you disagree matters. I'm not here to denigrate people and insult them. Nothing gets better that way. So let's see if you can follow that rule and you have your say. You ready to give me your phone calls about Milton or anything else? Let's get after it. All right, let's have what you want to talk about. I'm down here in Florida, obviously. You got over 1 million households without power. It's going to be that way for a while. A lot of unexpected and unanticipated consequences. Who wants to talk at me?
A bunch of people. Morgan from St. Pete, Florida.
Hello.
Morgan, what's your question?
My question is that it's more of a statement than a question. I believe that both parties, Republican and Democrats, are missing the whole global warming, which is causing and fueling the storms. I believe that they both have an opportunity. I do believe in a lot of Trump's policies, but I don't believe global warming is a hoax. I believe we are at the top of the 100,000-year Milankovitch cycle, which we are. The planet's been going through it for millions of years. And so if you take all the humans, all the combustion engines off of the planet, it's still going to warm. How much? Nobody really knows. But
What happened? Morgan's gone? Look, you're making a point. It's not about... it's not an absolute thing. It's a relative assessment, okay? And there's a difference between weather and climate, of course, when you're thinking about the cyclical dynamics of this Earth. But... look, the reason that we don't talk about it that much is because it's been politicized. And now, if you vote Trump, it's like overwhelmingly people don't want to hear anything about the science. We still talk about it. It's still real. You know, it used to be a 100-year storm. This has 100 years. They happen like every 2 years now. What do you think? It's a coincidence? You think it's just an abbreviated cycle? What we can do about it is the conversation to have. The science is the science. The reality is there. The problem is the pendular moves of our politics. So it's get rid of every car. Everything's got to be EV. We're not ready for that. People aren't ready for it. Our infrastructure is not ready for it. The price point isn't ready for it. The manufacturing of the batteries for the cars isn't ready for it yet. So the solution is the conversation, and you got to avoid extremes there just as much as you do with who wants to believe what kind of BS. Next.
We're going to stay with Florida right now, and we're going to go to Courtney from Wellington, Florida.
Hey, Courtney, what's your question?
Hey, my question is watching you with Bill O'Reilly and now with Lara Trump, I don't understand why you don't push back on them and ask them what the Republicans would do for the funding of the $750 that they're providing to, the people in North Carolina from Hurricane Helene. Because I guarantee the Republicans wouldn't give those Americans anything. And I think you need to push back and ask what would the Republicans done to help them out.
Well, hold on. My job is to push back in terms of the basis of the question and whether it's factually accurate. You're pushing back with an opinion, which is I don't think you would do anything about it. Now, you're thinking about, I think that is an extraction for you from Project 2025 and then wanting to shrink the footprint and the disaster relief fund. I believe that isn't a really legitimate basis for conversation, okay? Here's the problem with what they're saying. The $750 is one aspect of all these different buckets of money that FEMA has for relief. There is no conversation right now that FEMA's run out of money, that's what's going to be the fate of people in Florida or any of the other places that were affected by Helene. That's not true. That's what I pointed out, was that it's not necessary to make it up. And this isn't the first time I had the conversation. But the idea of saying, oh, well, you say that about Harris, I don't think you'd help any of the people, that's not real pushback. That's an argument. And I think you can do that in your politics. It does not benefit the national conversation. How you disagree matters. And my job is to evince the best form of what they're saying and hold it up to an obvious basis of comparison, which is Congress apportions the money, not the vice president. Okay, so why would you say that? That's what she has to justify and defend. So that's the way I do it. And maybe I don't do it as well as I should. And that's why I keep working on what I do. But I'm not just going to return a point of view with my own point of view. That's not helpful to anybody because I'm not running for office. Next.
Okay, we're going to go to Kathy. She is actually a Florida native, but she is now in Tennessee. Kathy.
Hey, Kathy, how you doing?
Fine, Chris. How are you? Thank you so much for your reporting in Florida. Spot on. I'm a native Floridian, been through many, many storms, the last one being Wilma. I currently live in Tennessee. I'd like to know is why is FEMA make that application for the $750 so difficult? Why is it so lengthy? Why can't they streamline it and make it easier? If you pull up the form and you look at it, they require a lot of information that if you've just been through a storm, you don't have that information anymore readily, handable to you. Why they can't, have like $750 preloaded debit cards that when you go to fill out your application, you sign for it and they give you a debit card. I don't see what the problem is, why they have to make it so difficult.
That's good. Well, it's not that they're trying to make it difficult. They're afraid of people taking the money, and this is the bureaucracy that they put in place, and it's not as efficient or effective enough. And you're right. This is why a lot of lawmakers try to privatize certain aspects of government services. Because the private sector, which is, I'm sure, where you work, it comes up with better innovations and streamlined processes that government often doesn't have. And what they're afraid of is people ripping them off. And they haven't thought it through and made it as good as they can. You are right. You should run for office. No, don't do that, because then you'll probably lose this penchant for effectiveness that you have. But you're right, it is onerous. And I want to remind people of the public service announcement that I started the show with. If anybody asks you to sign anything for your claim and says they're from the insurance company or wherever they're from, you need not sign anything that is a red flag that this person is trying to scam you. That is the message from the chief financial officer of the state of Florida. Okay? So protect yourself. Sign nothing. We done?
We'll be right back.
All right. Going to take a break. A little bit of a misting here from the back side of this as it goes by. This is what happens, the aftermath. And now all of these people are going to get wet again tonight, and a lot of them don't have a roof over their head. Stay with us.